More rain overnight, lows in the 40s. You can expect.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Administrative Committee meeting of the Moscow City Council, Monday, November 14th, 2016. Present on the committee today is John Weber, Gina Terusio, and Gary Riedner representing the city staff. First order of business today is the approval of the Administrative Committee meeting minutes from October 24th.
I recommend or make a motion that we approve.
Okay.
Yes, second.
Okay. Moved and seconded. All those in favor, approval of the minutes?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, second item on our agenda today is the MOU with the City of Lewiston for reciprocal emergency police response services. Roger Lanier is going to give us the details on that. Good afternoon,
Yes.
Roger.
Good afternoon, members of the council. What you should have in your packet is a updated copy of a memorandum of understanding for mutual assistance with the City of Lewiston. The memorandum and the program for mutual assistance has been in place at least since 1992 with the City of Lewiston. The most updated copy prior to this was signed in 2004. So it was the City of Lewiston's desire to go through, they have 7 mutual agreements with surrounding agencies, and it was their desire to go through all of them, update the language, and get signatures from people who are actually currently working for each agency or involved in their city government, and just update it. So there were minor updates in language from the last mutual agreement, but no change in substance. It basically spells out how each agency would respond, what types of responses they would respond to. It's reserved primarily for emergency assistance, and then how each agency would handle their personnel, their equipment, and any expenses that were part of that response. Any questions that I can help you out with?
Gary?
From our perspective, typically this mirrors most of our mutual aid agreements. It is just a understanding that in time of need we can be called upon. We can call upon Lewiston if we need them. As Roger indicated, the allocation of liability, the command structure, all of those things in an emergency situation are spelled out here. One of the things that we make sure of is that all the mutual aid agreements indicate that you have the option of whether to respond or not. This is a statement of intent, and should we have resources that we need to keep in the city, then of course those resources won't be sent out of the city in time of emergency, which is the same thing Lewiston has. So we will aid each other as much as we are able, so it just sets up a structure for that.
John?
Yeah, I think this is a no-brainer. We're just continuing with what we have had in place for a long time. It has worked well. A couple of the words are changed here and there, but the intent is still there. And so I think we can go forward with it.
I just have a quick curiosity question. I, too, think we can go forward with this. What, if anything, is in the agreement as far as how do we know that, or how do they know that we're sending what we can, and how do we know that they're sending what they can? Is there any way, we don't have any kind of reporting kind of a thing like that, or any oversight or anything?
No, I think it would be as simple as they make a request and tell us what type of situation they're dealing with and what type of resources they're looking for. It could be just additional personnel. It could be personnel with riot or crowd control gear or a vehicle or something like that.
Okay.
And then we make a determination if we can offer that up at the time, considering who we have on staff, the call load at the current time, just kind of how the situation is at that point in time.
Okay, I understood that part. What happens if they don't think we did what we should, or we think they didn't do what they should? Is there any kind of that moment?
I guess, are you asking, is there some kind of liability for not sending everything that we could have sent? It's our decision.
Probably.
It's our decision what we can send.
It's our own discretion, so
Yes.
there's no oversight at any point.
It's our decision whether we even want to respond or not,
Okay.
and it's our decision what resources we would respond with.
That's what I needed to know.
And it goes the other way too, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's a reciprocal
Yeah.
agreement.
Gary?
Yeah, we respond in good faith, just as Lewiston will respond in good faith.
Okay.
The bulk of the agreement lays out, if we respond, then who's going to command who? If someone gets injured, who's responsible for that? So on and so, who gets paid? We will not, if we call for Lewiston's aid, we will not pay Lewiston officers. They will pay their own officers, just as when we respond. And that's a typical mutual aid situation.
Okay.
So we could call upon them to bring their new militarized riot vehicle up here if we needed it, right?
We could make that request, yes.
Okay, well, I think this is something we're all in agreement that
Yeah.
it's a good thing for everybody involved, and we should probably put this on a consent agenda.
Yes, sir. Thanks, Roger.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, item number 3 on today's Administrative Committee agenda is the proposed amendment of Title 4, Chapter 1 regarding nonconformities. Mike Ray's going to tell us the details on that and how we can make it easier for people to rebuild things that get burned down.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm just briefing the committee on a ordinance that'll be before you next Monday at the November 21st council meeting. This is a ordinance that Planning and Zoning Commission has been working on over the last month or two. It relates to the nonconformity section of the zoning code, and what that usually covers are nonconforming structures. So at one point in time, the city, underneath that zoning code, would have allowed the construction of a structure, and then throughout time, subsequent zoning code changes happen, and then all of a sudden the rules are changed and it becomes nonconforming. So, pretty common occurrences are maybe the structure doesn't meet setback requirements, maybe it doesn't meet height requirements. Another aspect of this portion, this section of the code covers nonconforming uses of structures, and so that would be your common duplex within a single-family zone, which up until about 2008 we didn't really have any issues with because lending institutions really didn't look at them that closely. And ever since kind of the Great Recession happened, we had more scrutiny with those financial institutions, and nowadays it's hard to achieve financing on a duplex in a single-family zone because the financial institutions can't recoup their investment should the structure burn down, in the event of a fire, natural disaster, things like that. So it really places people in a burden of refinancing their home or having somebody purchase the property. They're often devalued just because of you need a cash offer to come in and actually purchase the property because you can't get a loan. So looking through that nonconformity section, really broken down into a number of subcategories. We have an intent section, nonconforming lots of record section. This mainly deals with lots within the city that maybe don't meet minimum lot width or lot size requirements. I really haven't had a whole lot of issues with these. You're still entitled to a single-family dwelling to be constructed on the property, so there is no changes being proposed at this time within that section. Nonconforming uses of land, there's a slight change being made to this, but really nothing substantive. This is regarding uses that maybe in one time were allowed but no longer are permitted underneath the zoning district where they're located. Usually we had run into this maybe a little bit in the past with agricultural properties. 2013 we had the urban ag amendment to the code, which allowed a wide variety of agricultural uses within the city limits, and so that eliminated most of those nonconformities regarding the use of the land. The primary changes that we're making are the nonconforming structures category, as well as nonconforming uses of structures, or the structures and premises in combination. And I just touched on those before, but we were bringing this to Planning and Zoning Commission. We ended up doing a little bit of research, looked at a few other jurisdictions in the area: Boise, Sandpoint, Pullman, Spokane, just across the border, and really, in our review of those ordinances, determined that they were a lot more lenient with their policies than we are, currently. These have probably been in effect for 20, 30 years, and a lot of these municipalities are recently changing their requirements to allow a little bit more flexibility to people that are faced with their nonconforming property situation. Now we have a repairs and maintenance portion, which we're also proposing some slight modifications to. But underneath the nonconforming structures section, really you're able to enlarge or alter it so long as it doesn't increase the nonconformity. Planning and Zoning Commission, when they looked at this, wanted to, obviously you're striking, but any structure or portion thereof may be altered to decrease its nonconformity. I think that's just inherent in the current language. But Planning and Zoning wanted to offer the ability to, through a conditional use permit, to be able to go to the Board of Adjustment through a public hearing and be able to use that same nonconformity within an expansion. So say you had a shed in your backyard, didn't meet the current setback requirements, you could always add on to that shed or structure. You would just have to stagger it so it met the setbacks, but you could. Planning and Zoning Commission wanted to offer the opportunity of going to get a CUP in order to expand the structure within the current setbacks, the nonconforming portion of the structure. So we had inserted there to reference subsection 4 that'll be inserted at the bottom. Right now, if the structure is destroyed, more than 70% of the replacement cost at the time of destruction can't be rebuilt. We'd be changing this portion to say that if it's destroyed by no fault of the owner, so a fire, flood, other natural disaster happens, it can be reconstructed. And so, these are typically accessory structures, but this would take care of the kind of the lending institution's concerns with being able to have it be reconstructed. We haven't changed this section regarding moving. Usually if you move the structure, it has to be moved to meet setback requirements, is what that says. And then at the very end, we'd be inserting kind of the other portion where you have the recitation above that talks about you can enlarge or alter the same zoning nonconformities through the issuance of a conditional use permit. So just pretty much opening the opportunity of a CUP in order to have a little bit more flexibility with doing an addition or expansion on the structure. Then we'd be looking at the repairs and maintenance portion. Right now, it kind of pigeonholes you into very specifics. It currently says ordinary repairs, replacement of non-bearing walls, fixtures, wiring, or plumbing may be done on a non-conforming structure, provided the volume of the structure as it existed when it became non-conforming should not be increased. So, it's really specific. Anytime you have one of these older structures, and you're doing repair and maintenance on those, at some point in time you're probably going to run into a bearing wall. And so, this would be really overly onerous to say that you wouldn't be able to touch, a portion of a foundation that was deteriorating on the side and be able to fix that. And so we're just clearing that up through this section. This is the nonconforming uses of structure, so this is the duplex and the single-family zone. We wouldn't be doing a whole lot to this section other than including kind of the similar language that we had in the previous nonconforming structures section to say that you have a use that is not permitted in the zoning district in which it's located that was legally permitted before. Right now, you can't enlarge, extend, construct, reconstruct, move, or structurally alter except in changing the use of the zone which the structure is permitted. So you can't do any of that without converting it to a single-family dwelling would be the example. We would say that add a sentence at the end, which similar language that if it's destroyed by no fault of the owner, then you're going to be able to replace that, and so that would alleviate all, like I mentioned before, all the lending concerns of financial institutions in order to be able to reconstruct that. Really no changes to the rest of the section. We have a your standard, if it's abandoned for a certain period of time, then you can no longer, you're really required to convert it to a use that's in the underlying zone. And then at the very end, we had defined really when it's destroyed, What's the point where if it goes above that, you can't replace it or repair it? And so with the being, allowing people to rebuild should it be destroyed by no fault of the owner, then we don't need that section anymore. And so Planning and Zoning Commission did conduct a public hearing that happened on October 26th, and they recommended approval of the ordinance to City Council. And like I mentioned before, we've got this scheduled for public hearing on the Council's upcoming November 21st meeting. And so I'd certainly be able to answer any questions that you might have.
This appears to me to be similar to what we did here on Washington Street behind the Hahn Building Supply, when we had the same problem with people not being able to sell their houses because the people buying them could not get loans. And so we changed the zoning, and so that all of a sudden there were 3 or 4 houses in there banks would look at as far as a loan. This appears to me a similar type deal. All we're doing is making it so if we were to pass this, and I'm in favor of it, we would just be making it possible or easier for people to sell their property and for other people to get loans on the property, because the banks will now look at them in a much more favorable way. So I don't really have any problem with this.
Yeah, it
Very
would
good
seem to
point.
me that, people that own these non-conforming structures would be reluctant to maintain them in an up-to-date manner if they felt like if it burnt down, then they would never be able to recover their investment as well. So it's probably, I think it's a good thing, and we should forward it on for the regular agenda of the next meeting for public hearing.
Okay. Will do.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Next up, we've got Kathleen Burns with a couple of reports for us. First one is the Smithsonian exhibit update. I'm sure she has an elaborate PowerPoint presentation for that.
Not elaborate, but
I suppose that's a matter of opinion.
yeah.
As far as I'm concerned, they're all elaborate.
Okay. So, right now, out in the gallery, you see a kids exhibit that's related to the. And that was this summer, a bunch of kids with the Egan Youth Center Day Camp, Adventure Club, the Palouse Clearwater Environmental Institute, and the Palouse Prairie School put together this waterways exhibit out here now with youth art. That's kind of in preparation for the next exhibit, which is our waterways exhibit, which is coming pretty quick. What I just handed you is the speaker series that the Historical Society has put together for the waterways exhibit. And the big thing to know is this is the first Smithsonian exhibit that we've had in Moscow. So, and this has been a partnership with Latah County Historical. Dulcie took the lead on this one, and we're the host. But this is a grant through the Idaho Humanities Council that is bringing this exhibit here. And the exhibit will be on 3 floors, and it's mostly education. And there's also our local water department and the Latah County. There'll be an exhibit on the 3rd floor on how we developed our water system. So I just have a slide to show you, and hopefully it's going to work. So this is kind of what they're going to be looking like, is there'll be kiosks, and there'll be, this is a traveling exhibit from Washington, D.C., and it'll explain the importance of water. Well, that's very valuable to our region, hence the speaker series as well. So I just wanted to give you a visual. Our opening night is going to be December 9th, and the truck with all the containers will be coming from Nampa. There's only two spaces that it's exhibiting right now, Nampa, Idaho, and then Moscow. So just wanted to let you know how important that was for our town. Do you have any questions about the exhibit or about the speaker series coming up?
I'm glad we're doing something like this. Glad
Okay.
we're a part of it, and the Smithsonian is got a real nice reputation.
Yeah.
So if we're part of something that, or if they're part of something that we're doing, I think that's great.
Good.
I just think it's great that you collaborated like you did to bring it here. I think
Yes.
that's fabulous.
Yes.
So I'm all about that collaboration stuff.
That's good. And if you've been raining, if you've been out in the rain and you've seen the poetry, any of the quotes, there's a quote right out here at 3rd and Washington. So don't be disappointed when it rains. Just we'll send you the graph with the map where all the different quotes are.
I have
They've been
running-
recently most visible.
Yes. This is true.
I've been running outside every morning that looks wet in front of the chamber going, so I sure hope the little quote fairies are coming our direction.
They are coming your direction. They're not
Good.
done yet. So
Good.
okay, and let me show you the next one.
Sorry.
So, oops, sorry. Whoop. Not that one. Where did it go?
I think it's magic.
This one?
Because Zach does it?
Sorry.
Because he is a wizard.
Because he can do it. I can't.
It's clear that he is a wizard.
Yeah, he is. Okay. So then the next project I just wanted to bring you up to speed is the public art at the library. And we did do a final on commitment of who will be involved in the project. And this is your selection panel. So we have Chris Sokol with the library. Gina's on the Moscow Arts Commission. And we have two MAC members, Catherine Clancy and Lauren McCleary. We have Bruce Haglin with the University of Idaho, and he's in architecture and interior design. We have Jennifer Rod, who is our local community artist. It's also her neighborhood, so she's volunteered to serve. And then the three non-voting people are myself, the arts director, and then we have an ex officio MAC member, Elizabeth Graff, who is a landscape architect, and then we have David Schott with the Park and Rec Department. So we're going to start our meetings and put the project together, and I'll update you as we get going. So,
Great.
any other questions?
I think you've done a great job of explaining things in a clear and legible fashion, so thank you.
As long as we can get those power pages up. Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Kathleen.
You're welcome.
All right, that's everything we have on our agenda today, unless anybody else has anything further they'd like to add.
Staff has nothing further.
I'd entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.